Welcome to the antique doll discussion. I don't know what else to call this video. Okay, first off, not a doll expert. I've been collecting dolls since about 1998-ish, right around there. How I got started is I ended up hating dolls. My whole life I hated, absolutely loathed dolls. Especially when I was a child, I was an odd child. I would much rather have a Chewbacca doll than a freaking real doll. And so my parents would never know what to get me for Christmas, except for I liked animals. So they would get me stuffed animals. And yes, I liked little stuffed dogs and little stuffed cats, not like real stuffed or taxidermied cats or dogs, but I was odd enough. And so when I was a little kid, an old lady came up to me and I had a doll carriage. Yes, I did. I had a doll carriage. And she said, "Can I see your baby?" And she lifted up the blanket and she screamed, "Ah!" It's because I had a Chewbacca doll under the blanket. And I was wheeling around Chewie from Star Wars. Yes, I hated dolls that much. So once somebody bought me a doll, my mom told me I was about 3. A relative did not know not to get me a doll. Even though I was a little girl, they figured, oh, what do little girls like? Dolls. And so for a holiday, I forgot what holiday it was, I was given a doll. It was a doll that wet itself. Yes, it did. It wet itself. And so one day my mother overheard me actually talking to the doll. I was like 3, and I was saying to the doll, I was actually trying to reason with a doll. And I said, "Can you please do me a favor? Can you stop wetting your diaper? I'll be nice to you. I'll be nice to you if you just stop peeing yourself." And then I told my mother, "Mom, it's not listening to me. It won't stop peeing itself, and I don't like changing diapers." So I asked my mom to throw it in the garbage, and she did. And how did I end up changing? Why did I start to collect dolls? Well, I'll tell you how. One day I was looking at regular general antiques on eBay, and they used to have things called live auctions, not like the regular everyday Joe Schmo auctioning off their stuff and say the auction listing is ending that day and you're watching the little ticker clock countdown. No, it was actually auction houses that used to actually work in conjunction with eBay, where you can bid live while people live in the audience at the auction house were bidding. And I just so happened, I was looking at regular antiques, not dolls, and I just so happened to see a doll, and it said antique Victorian doll. It was dressed from head to toe in the most beautiful lavender gown, original from the 1800s, with a bustle in the back. She was wearing an enormous, ginormous hat that was stunning. And I was like, oh my God, I don't like the doll. I like the clothes. And so I bid on that doll and thinking, oh, I got it in the bag. And nope, I did not have it in the bag because other people had deeper pockets than me, won that doll. And then at that moment, I felt heartbroken that I lost that doll. Not because I wanted the doll. I wanted something like a mannequin to display a beautiful Victorian gown with all the accessories like that doll had, which she also had a parasol and a little purse. And I was like, I have to find that doll. So I started collecting dolls, looking for beautiful Victorian outfits on them. And that's how my doll collection started. By going after dolls, looking for dolls wearing Victorian clothing. And then I morphed into, okay, I like dolls now. As long as they don't wet their pants, I like dolls. So what we have here is a really beautiful doll, circa about the late 1880s. So I'm going to guess we're talking like 1887, 1885, 1890, like right around that time frame. Now this doll does not have her original wig, but she does have her original gown. It's made out of cotton with lace, as you can see here. Now I added the pretty little sash or ribbon, whatever you want to call it. Look at this. It's simple, but yet oh so pretty. It's dirty. It's a little yellowed from age. What do you expect? She's over 120 something years old. And so we had the little lace details along the sleeves. And that's what really draws me to these dolls, especially, and I'll show you something really cool, the original undergarments. So when they have their slips underneath the dress and their original pantaloons or pantalettes, yes, this was underwear. and that it was not fun to wear, if you know what I mean. And when they had their original shoes, oh my God, and socks, I flip out. And so she has her original shoes. Now look at this. This is 1880s, boys and girls. This is an 1880s shoe. Very Mary Jane style with the strap going across. Made out of leather. Look at the details. So cool. With this little rusted buckle. Yes, things like that get rusted. Sometimes you will be lucky enough to find, if you look under the bottom of the shoe, there'll be like some kind of markings of some sort. The sole is missing on that one. And sometimes it'll give you a hint of a company that made it. There'll be like a little number, a template, a symbol, whatever. But yes, these are original shoes with their original buckles and original socks. Can we get a zoom on that? Yes, this is what stockings looked like back then. They were knitted usually or made out of some kind of like silky material. They did not have polyester yet, thankfully. And so there we go. Now, this is going to happen. This stuff disintegrates. The little buttons that hold things together fall apart. This little purse came with her as well, made out of velvet and lace with a gorgeous little satin ribbon, really pretty. And her wig is actually not original to her. I added it on. These wigs are very expensive. It's made out of mohair. So finding a replica wig for a doll that's like of the period, that's not made out of like some kind of modacrylic fibers or like that synthetic type of fiber is very hard to find on the cheap. You want to get either mohair or human hair wigs as replacements. And like I said, they are not cheap. She just lost her purse. And yeah, so when I find them under $80, it's a godsend. Now, a lot of dolls, especially made in Germany, like this one, were mass produced. Germany was actually the toy capital of the world at this time frame that this doll was being made. Almost every toy that was made prolifically was made in Germany, although other countries, of course, did make them, including the United States. Most of the toys that were actually sold in the United States did come from foreign countries, mostly Germany and France, but for the most part from Germany. America did have toy making manufacturers, but the Germans actually undersold everybody. All the American companies could not keep up with the prices that the Germans offered for quality toys. So the Americans pretty much, yeah, they made toys, but not as much as the Germans. The Germans were able to mass produce products. They were the China of the world back at this time, not only making toys, but making many other things as well, and making affordable things, mass produced, but beautifully handcrafted. So this doll has gorgeous paperweight eyes. Now, if you're wondering what paperweight eyes are, they are like fixed glass eyes that do not sleep. So when you place the doll down, the doll does not actually have like moving eyelids. These are hand-blown glass. See how they jut out of the eye socket? That's why you call them paperweights. She has an open mouth with little teeth, and they're bisque or porcelain. I don't know if you can see that, but there we go. And she has pierced ears, much like the French dolls. Now, if you're collecting dolls and you have the money to collect dolls, by the way, these are her original earrings, little pink faux pearl little earrings. You want to collect French dolls. Why? Because that's where all the value is. French dolls are luxurious dolls. They were luxury products at the time that these dolls were being made. The Germans were actually mass producing dolls for middle class people. And people that were a little under middle class would be able to afford a doll or a toy for their children because of the Germans. The Germans' mass production and factories. It was bar none. You could not actually equal the Germans in price and quality. Now, during this time frame, they had dolls that had closed mouths as well, but the open mouth was more of a newer invention that came later on in the doll making time frame or history. So this was a new invention, and so what they would do is cut a little slit out in the mouth into the bisque and insert porcelain teeth. The earlier ones will have carved bisque teeth actually inside the head. Really interesting to see dolls like that. But the earlier dolls and the French dolls would have these little closed mouths. The Germans, I believe, came up with this idea of inserting teeth to make the doll look more realistic, like a little girl. A lot of collectors, though, want the closed mouth dolls. They're more French looking, and the later dolls had the open mouth with the teeth somewhere in the 1880s that really started to take off. Now, here we go. We're going to look at the body. Now, a lot of dolls did come with kid leather bodies and a bisque head, which was known as a shoulder head. So it came with the head and the neck and the shoulder area, all one piece of bisque attached to a kid leather body. The more expensive dolls, especially German ones, would have the composition wood jointed bodies, which were movable and posable. If you were more looking for an affordable doll, pretty much you would get a kid leather body doll for your kid. The more expensive dolls would have the composition, although cheap dolls did have composition jointed bodies as well. But the cheaper dolls came with the kid leather bodies. Now, this doll is really beautiful. She's sort of made by a company that was actually does not get enough respect, believe it or not, according to me. I'll tell you right now, the company that made this doll does not get enough respect. It deserves way more respect than it gets. It was Bahr and Proschild. Now, Bahr and Proschild actually made a model called the 224, which Thomas Alva Edison made the phonograph doll using the heads from Bahr and Proschild. Also, another company by the name of Simon and Halbig. But the 224 was actually put in the Thomas Alva Edison talking dolls. He produced the phonograph that would play actual nursery rhymes coming out of the doll, which was a flop. Nobody wanted to buy it because it creeped out the kids. The sounds that came from the doll scared the shiz out of kids, and his invention was a flop. But he used this particular head from German manufacturers, Simon and Halbig and Bahr and Proschild. The 224 in the bigger size, 22 inches, I believe, was the ones that Edison made. Now, this is a cabinet-sized doll, and if you're just learning to collect dolls, you're going to wonder, what the hell is a cabinet-sized doll? A cabinet-sized doll is a smaller antique doll that fits in your cabinet really easily. Now, the bigger the doll, the harder it is to fit in your cabinet, the harder it is if you have a doll hoard, and you collect way too many dolls. You're definitely, you're going to want the smaller ones eventually. You're going to start collecting the smaller dolls so it can fit in your cabinet. Let's take her wig off. And here we go. Now she has what's called a pate if you're new to collecting. This is a lid that would actually complete the rest of the head that was cut off to insert the glass eyes. And we can look in there and we could see pretty much, plaster of Paris holding the two glass eyes inside the head and keeping them secure and actually in place. All right, so let's look at the mold to actually try to find out who made your doll. Always look on the back of the head or on the back of the shoulders if it's a shoulder head. Sometimes hidden under the kid leather body if it has a kid leather body. We see the number 224. And again, this is a mold number made by Bahr and Proschild. And what the hell was that? I think, something just flew across the room. I hope this doll isn't haunted. Speaking of haunted, okay, she came with a note pinned inside her dress that I just found now for the first time, and I've had this doll for over 15 years. Okay, and it has a typewritten thing. It says, doll given to Marilyn Horger, Borman in the 1970s. 1981. Doll is 80 to 85 years old. That's bunk. That's actually, in 1981, this doll, I do not think this doll was made in 1900. This doll is older than 1900. This doll is definitely from the late 1880s. So sometimes the information that's handed down, now this is called provenance. Sometimes the provenance, it's he said, she said. It's like a game of telephone. So somebody will tell you a story, they'll hear from somebody else in their family, and that person that they heard that story from heard it from someone else in the family, and the information gets incorrect sometimes. And so you can't always take the provenance written down. You can't really take it fully 100% word for word, but it does say 1981, doll is 80 to 85 years old. That's incorrect. Belonged to Julia Horger, Marilyn Horger Borman's aunt. When Julia's was 18 years old, her mother died. Ooh, how tragic. Her mother's doctor, named Larson, she asked the doctor to take care of her, and he married her. After he died, she married my uncle, Frank Horger, who died in 1948. Wow, interesting. He was my uncle on my father's side. I don't even know who this person is. I really don't. I have to start Googling names now. He was my uncle on my father's side. Julia became an alcoholic while married to the doctor. What the hell? All right. Very interesting. Again, the provenance is slightly incorrect about the age of this doll. Who knows if this is even the truth? You get these little notes pinned to things. People hear a story from their family members. It's not always 100% true. So we can take this with a little bit of a grain of salt, although it could be Julia's doll. Maybe it was her mother's doll. Did you ever think of that? It was probably Julia's mother's doll. So if you go on, I don't know, Ancestry.com, the bastards will want you to pay $99 a year to get this information. And yeah, so I probably won't even bother. But the 224, let's find out more about Bahr and Proschild. Oh, duh. I forgot to show you how this doll can pose. So yeah, this is really cool. So the little hands can pose, look at this, 360 degrees. You can turn up the elbows. You can turn up the arms. You can hold the arms up. You can turn and swivel her head. I'm not going to do this with one hand and film with the other. Completely 360 going around. The legs. You can move the knees. You can bend her into a seated position. I mean, these composition dolls were a genius invention if you really think about it. Now, before we go into the history, you can actually see the original wig was brown, and it appears that it was human hair. And this is not a bother. If you're a doll collector and you see glue remnants along the base of the head, if you're missing the wig, yeah, this does not detract from the value. What detracts from the value is if the doll has a hairline crack or chip to the head. Oh yeah, that's going to harm the value by a lot of money. But glue remnants, nah, not a problem at all. You can actually soak that off, because the paint was actually fired in a kiln into the bisque. So you really, if you can gently, by the way, do not put water on the eyes. If you put water on the eyes, the plaster of Paris that's holding them inside the head will disintegrate. But if you take a damp cloth and just leave it around the rim of the head for about maybe 15-20 minutes, this is old hide glue, which was animal glue. It should disintegrate in a little bit of lukewarm water. But again, do not get the eyes wet, or they'll actually fall out inside of the head. Okay, so we're on a very expensive, if you're going to buy dolls and you have the money to afford them, you want to go on, I'm going to pronounce it wrong, it's French sounding, the Rose Auction House. You don't want to get your dolls from there. This one sold for $2,300. It's a much larger version of my doll. It's the Bahr and Proschild 224 mold with brown eyes. Yes, they came in different color hair and different color eyes. So this is a brown-eyed version, much larger than mine. It appears to be original dress. And yes, this is a 23-inch. Mine is about a 14-inch doll. So it's a much bigger doll. And Marks 224, made by Bahr and Proschild circa 1888. Very interesting. Is mine worth $2,300? It probably is not, because if I was to sell this on eBay, yeah, you get a lot of people that are bargain hunters. They're going to look for the bargains. They don't want to pay $2,300. It's not a specialized antique doll site. If I was to sell my doll at the Rose, I could probably see about $1,000 to $1,500 for it. Okay, so we're on Ruby Lane right now. We're going to check out what's the value of some of these dolls. Now, some people, it's pretty much they let them go for cheap. So this particular Bahr and Proschild doll, by the way, not as nice as mine. Nowhere near as nice. Come on, pictures, load. Oh, here we go. All right, yeah. I'm trying to show you guys, but this one is in a actual what's known as a regional costume. And they were actually made to emanate peasants of different countries. And so you see this one being sold on Ruby Lane. It's a small one, a cabinet-sized one. And here's what the body looks like on mine. I'm not taking her dress off, except for mine has jointed wrists. This one looks like it has what's called straight wrists. So they don't articulate at that area. And here we go. So, yep, this is probably what my doll's body looks like. How much is it being sold for? $695. Okay, but I wouldn't let mine go for less than, I'm telling you right now, $1,000. You might think I'm crazy, but that's because I don't want to part with my collection. Here's a bigger version of the same mold as my doll. And it takes forever for Ruby Lane's photos to process. But here we go. And you can see this is the larger Bahr and Proschild 224 mold. And they look very different, don't they? By size. Like the bigger they are, the different the faces look. It's just really crazy. How much is this one? This one is $775. Again, a 17-inch one. And quite lovely. Let's go back. And we have to go sideways again. Sorry about that. And I have a frog in my throat. This one being sold for $1,600. You see how the prices are all just, I don't know, people just throw prices on them. And here's a black version, or African American version. So it's going to be worth, it's going to sell for more money because this is more rare, because you barely ever see African American versions of these dolls. They're out there. They're just not as plentiful. And here we go. So she's being sold for $1,650 on sale. Down from $1,850. And we'll continue to look. Here's another one. This one is the mold 225. The one on the right for $1,060 in the red dress. That's a 225 mold. Very different. Here's a Bahr and Proschild doll. Bahr and Proschild dolls are very beautiful. Very well made. Wow, this one is stunning. She looks a lot like a French doll. And it's very hard to make these pictures smaller. I'm very sorry. But here we go. And yeah, she looks a lot like a French doll. Wow, she really looks like a French doll. And it says, I don't even know what it says on the back of the head. Let's read. It's a Bahr and Proschild with $275 on the back of the head. Now, the body has an old paper tag that reads SFBJ, which was the French syndicate of doll makers. When the Germans put them out of business in the late Victorian era, somewhere around the 1890s, the very late 1890s. Yes, the Germans put the French out of business. They got together all as a group and even bought heads from German doll makers. By the way, this one's $689. And because they couldn't compete with the Germans anymore. So the Germans made very French jumeau looking type of dolls for the actual French people to sell, because they just couldn't keep up with the Germans at all. The Germans were just way too prolific at this point, selling a high quality product for way less than the French luxury dolls. And that's what happened. They put them out of business. Now here we have a 14-inch Bahr and Proschild doll. It looks like it has a closed mouth. And you see very French looking. And Ruby Lane's pictures never freaking load. Here we go. A little diminutive one. Very similar in height to mine. The dress almost looks, the dress looks very, very, very similar. This is, it looks like mold number 204, which is another one of their molds. Very French-like, with pierced ears. The French were known for pierced ears. The Germans were not. German companies tried to emanate the French companies, and those particular doll makers would add pierced ears to try to be like very French. And here we go. This is a beautiful, beautiful little doll. How much is it being sold for? $1,100. And it's a Bahr and Proschild cabinet-sized doll, 14 inches. Okay, so we got the Bahr and Proschild dolls German. We're going to try to find out more about this because we're learning, right? That's what we're doing. This is a dolly discussion. George Bahr and August Proschild founded the Bahr and Proschild. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It could be Proschild, you know? I'm not German. I don't know. They founded the company, also spelled Bahr and Proschild. Okay, so it is pronounced Proschild, for the American market, which began as a porcelain and doll factory in 1871 in Ohrdruf, Germany. They registered their first doll molds in 1888 and merged with Bruno Schmidt Doll Company around 1919. So on the left, we have a doll circa 1888, Bahr and Proschild, mold number 204, glass eyes, closed mouth, but in the picture it has an open mouth. I don't even think that's the correct doll for the picture. Okay, whatever. I'm no expert, but it has an open mouth that says closed mouth there. All right. Bahr and Proschild made China, Bisque, shoulder or socket head celluloid dolls and supplied doll heads and parts to other companies. For companies such as Carl Harmus Jr., Clay & Hahn, Bruno Schmidt, Heinrich Steyer, and probably others. George Borgfeldt was their distributor to the American USA market. Dating their dolls circa 1871. Now, didn't they just say above that they came out in 1881? You see, like, we're trying to figure this out. Oh, no. Okay, they did start in 1871, but the first doll mold in 1888. Very strange. Okay. In 1871, the first dolls, it says, marked with only a mold number on the first dolls circa 1888. Mold number plus DEP was added in 1895. Mine does not have DEP added to that number, so it's prior to 1895. We do know we have an early doll. And so 1895 and on, we would see initials, also B and P, plus the mold number. Circa 1900, we would see crossed swords were added to the mark. So we do know we have an earlier doll. Circa 1909, the trademark Bupurit registered for celluloid dolls. Circa 1919, Bahr and Proschild was purchased by Bruno Schmidt and then used a heart with a letter BP as part of their marking. Bahr and Proschild dolls identified. Okay, circa 1888, Bahr and Proschild doll mold 220 Bisque Belton type head Oriental doll. So a Belton doesn't have a you know the spot I showed you with the little cardboard pate or lid on top of the head? They did not have that. The top of the head was closed, and it had two holes, tiny little holes drilled in the top with the elastic stringing going through it. That's a Belton head. Okay, so 1888, mold number 220, closed mouth Oriental doll. Circa 1888, Bahr and Proschild doll 244, which is the Scowling Indian, which is this one right here that you see. Okay, and this is the Oriental doll. Let's try to blow that up if we could see that. Wow, that's really artistry. That's amazing. All right. So the Scowling Indian was 1888. 1893, Bahr and Proschild doll marked mold 305. It's a shoulder head. And that actually doesn't look up to their, quality standards. So mine's gonna be somewhere late 1880s. Probably about 1880 something to 1890. Very interesting. Here's another one. And this one says 1893 Bahr and Proschild doll mold 305 shoulder head. So this is what a shoulder head looks like that I mentioned to you guys. It's Bisque porcelain, all in one piece, with the shoulder and the neck and the head attached to a kid body. Mine has a composition body with the jointed head that swivels. This one does not swivel. The head is stationary. All right, so now we're learning, right? Okay. And so my number is prior to the 305 number. So again, mine is probably late 1888-ish, 1890, right around there. Very interesting to find out. And here's their 320. So as the time progresses, the mold numbers go up. And so I guess sequentially the numbers go up the later and, closer to the butt end of the making of these dolls goes. And here's some more. Now, 1911, this was very, very, very common. These character baby dolls, right around the turn of the century, these baby dolls, actually, they're grotesque looking. I think they are. You might think they're adorable. But these character dolls, they call them character dolls, really, really took off right around then. And, they actually made really unusual faces. Look at that. It's a crying baby. Really interesting. And let's continue to go. And then as time progressed a little further, they started making these googly-eyed dolls with these watermelon smiles, with these, look at the way the eyes are turned, looking to the side like that with a watermelon-shaped mouth. These really became popular, known as these little character dolls or googly eye dolls. Really, really interesting. And here we go. They're showing some markings that you might see. The DEP came after my doll. So my doll is actually probably one of the earlier ones. Really interesting. And we continue as we move on. You'll see BNP marked and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's go back to my doll. By the way, here's a later doll, 1912. You'll see the cross sword symbol with the BP. Now, I'll be honest with you. I don't think Bahr and Proschild or Proschild dolls get enough respect in the doll collecting world. Really unbelievably beautifully painted faces, most of them. Now, German dolls were known to be prolifically made, mass produced. But yeah, the early Bahr and Proschild or Proschild dolls were really, very French looking. Extremely, extremely French looking. And I'm telling you right now, these dolls need a lot more respect. They deserve a lot more respect than they get in the doll collecting world. They're just as good as any Kessner or Simon and Halbig doll, in my opinion. Look how pale her Bisque is, by the way. They are just exquisite, exquisite dolls, especially, like I said, their earlier dolls, and especially their character dolls, like the googly-eyed ones and their character baby dolls. They do not get the respect they deserve. I think probably somewhere in probably the next decade or so, maybe a little sooner, hopefully, these dolls will definitely get a lot more respect, and the values for them should be going up. Really, there's not as many of these early BP dolls around, especially the lower mold numbers, like in the 200 number range. Very, very few of them. You don't see them too often. And when you do, they're probably like in really, really terrible condition. It looks like this doll was probably never played with. This doll was very respected. As a matter of fact, children weren't able to play with their dolls. I read a lot of stories about this. They weren't allowed to play with their dolls like kids do today. They were actually only allowed to play with their dolls at the church on Sunday, supervised for about an hour or two, and that was it. That's why a lot of these dolls actually survive today, because kids were not allowed to toss their toys around and disrespect their toys. They were not cheap. Especially a middle-class family couldn't afford to spend $100 back then, which what a doll like this would have probably cost anywhere between $60 to $100. And so a parent would watch like a hawk, especially with a Bisque porcelain head. Yeah, they didn't want their kid to toss the doll on the floor and the head to shatter into a million pieces after they made such an investment. And so I think these dolls deserve a lot more respect. We do have provenance. Provenance adds value. Again, I don't believe this story about 1981 and the dollar's 80 to 85 years. That is most likely Julia's mother's doll. So I'm guessing that Julia's mother handed this doll down to her, that she did not get this brand new. And yeah, that's the story, and that's what I'm sticking to. And so I'm going to do some Googling. You might want to do it too. So let's look up these names. Julia Horja, and it says Marilyn Horja Borman. Okay, so we'll look up these names. Larson. So Julia Larson, I guess she was 18. Her mother died. Her mother's doctor's name was Larson. Okay, so Larson, what names are we looking for? Larson Horja Borman. Okay, I don't know. Sounds somebody was an alcoholic, and this is the type of information that I wonder. I feel like dialing this number 1-800-228-9290. Let's all call it and see if the Marriott still is actually there using that same number, because this was 1981. Yeah, I'm like a jerk that way. I'm curious. We'll call toll free. Let's do that. All right, so there we go. We got the Bahr and Proschild 224 doll. One of the heads that Edison used for his phonograph doll. Really beautiful. I have a bigger version of it. You can watch my other video showing it, but I like the cabinet size one better. Not going to lie. I think she's much prettier, much demure, much daintier, and much more precious. Easier to actually store in a cabinet. And thanks for watching. Yeah, this was a little long. Sorry about that.